Dark Knight's Death Metal, Robin King, issue 1, Riley Rosmo, of course, on art, with Peter G. Tomasi on the main story. It was a backup story with Tony Patrick and Daniel Semper. I, of course, just read this by choice because I am generous and care about the quality of the show and giving the audience an opinion on this big book that came out this week. Connor was forced to read this via a Patreon perk. Every month of patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, or the higher tiers, you can make me or Connor read a book. And one such patron decided to make Connor read this.
I knew you were going to be reading it anyway, so I didn't need to provide coverage for this.
The whole point of this show is to have conversations about the books. When only one of us reads the book, which does happen from time to time because of just tastes or whatever. But that's not the first reason. It's not like if I didn't read this, you'd be like, you know what, I'm going to take the bullet for the team because I must.
No, it's true, and there are books this week that neither of us are reading because proving the point that we're not here to provide a service. We're here to read the books that we want to read and then have a bit of a chit chat about them, and also the books that we're forced to read, apparently.
Yes. So I mean, where to begin with this? I
will say, I did not know there was a backup. I didn't realize. I didn't really pay too much attention to the credits. I just kind of like, all right, fine, I best get through this. So when I got to the point where all of a sudden it ended, and I was like, wait, hang on a second, there's still loads of pages left. And then I turned the page, and it was Sampier, who I really quite like. That put me in a good mood for.
Oh, was that a nice surprise?
It was.
I didn't know there was a backup until I noticed that there was multiple names, and I went, oh wait, there's another set of people here. I guess there must be a second story. I didn't know what the second story was. It turns out to be something of a, other Robins, Bat family, I mean, mainly a Duke story, but with guest appearances from Tim, Steph, and Cass, which is always nice. Honestly, the main story in this, for the most part, it kind of made me think more of the not Tales from Dark. What were the evil Batman one shots called back when we had Metal? I can't remember what they were called, but you know, we got one that was a con. Here's the speedster Batman's like origin. Here's the Aqua Bat lady's origin. This issue, or the main story at least, for the most part, is that for Robin King, just with a little bit more kind of context in the main present day part of the crossover as well.
Yeah, there was about 3 pages, because it opens with a prologue, which is, I'm assuming, kind of just the gist of what happened in the story that was in the other issue before.
I mean, not really. It's more the aftermath of it.
Okay, fair enough. And then it cuts to now, and there's like 3 or 4 pages where I was like, oh shit, is this actually going to be a relevant issue? And then the rest of it was like, oh, okay, like I say, it's one of those issues. It's one of those Dark Knight issues, and it's probably the most skippable of all the non-anthology tie-ins we've had so far. I'm thinking of the 3 that we had last month that all ended up feeling fairly important. This one feels like if you did skip this, you wouldn't be missing much.
Yeah, I think it's probably my least favorite because I liked the first 2 as well before last month's 3 really necessary ones.
They were the anthology ones that we had before, right? And those were kind of more along the lines of this style of story, but they were anthologies, so they were a lot shorter stories.
I felt like they were adding a lot to the context, and I think that still does a little bit. It might be a little relevant if the planet of Robins becomes important or comes up at all in the main story. If it even says at the end, continued in Death Metal 5, so it might pop up in there. So I'll credit this for still feeling like it's part of the greater event and doesn't just feel like a complete cash grab. Rosmo's art is, of course, polarizing at the best of times. I will say that much like the short story in that anthology, this is definitely not the worst that I've seen of his art. I think partly because his style actually lends itself to the character of the Robin King a little bit. I think he typically looks pretty good in Rosmo's art. Whereas, whenever we see Superman, for example, a few pages in there looks quite deformed because...
There was I will say, there were multiple points where I saw Robin King, and just for a second, it looked just like a Court of Owls mask. And I was like, who's this? Who's this wearing an owl mask? And then I realized, oh, no, never mind, it's just Robin. That caught me a couple of times. I think it's the way he draws the shape of the face with the the very pale and the big eyes. It kind of just reminded me of those masks.
Yeah, the gist of this is that the opening sort of sets up just him like building his suit and deciding to be this Robin character, and it even does like a sort of take on the "Yes, Father, I shall become a Robin" at the funeral of his parents, which it was neat enough touch. But once we actually jump ahead, he's essentially going around killing the various superheroes in his world, and he kills Firestorm. He kills what are these two jokers in the planes, Hans von Hammer and Steve Savage. I can't say I'm super familiar with these characters, but
Matt probably would have loved them.
Matt probably would have been jumping over the moon at the appearance of these two. So we got some plane action there. He ends up, beaming Adam Strange, but not with a Zeta beam, with a Ata's beam into a wall. And that's when the Batman Who Laughs shows up. This is him recruiting him, which this is the part that made me really think of those one shots, because a lot of those were, here's this Batman in their world, and then it ends with the Batman Who Laughs showing up and recruiting them.
This just has another, handful of pages after that. Half the story, probably.
I say it's probably more like half, because we get there's part of the story that I really liked. Because there's some stuff in present day with Robin King fighting Blue Beetle, Red Tornado,
Animal Man, and Red Tornado,
and Animal Man, yeah, and all that stuff was fine. The stuff that I liked though is the idea that Batman Who Laughs takes this Robin to his world, where he's like sort of like basically vetting and like conditioning all the Batmen that he's collecting. But he's got all these Robins, and we find out that he's making the Robins into these sort of zombies that say crow over and over. He does that by putting them into kind of a vat of yeah,
a Joker toxin.
It's like it's like Joker toxin and stuff. But he essentially like creates, he takes whatever Robins he finds and turns them into these zombie Robins that he has, for lack of a better word. But Robin King here, as he's not technically the Robin King yet, but just to differentiate, he takes this pill that he actually made to deal with Martian Manhunter, his version of Martian Manhunter, and it actually lets enough of his psyche kind of survive this process, so that he's saying crow, crow, crow when he comes out. We get this full page layout, which kind of reveals that this is almost this weird like toxic cyberpunk factory where he's making these Robins out of people that he's taken from other worlds. But he kind of retained a bit of himself, and that's kind of why in the main story and then here in this one shot, he's kind of regained who he is and his personality. Not that he's likable or a nice guy by any means, he's still this evil little shit, but he's not just like a mindless drone that's following whatever the Batman Who Laughs says. And it turns out at the end that him taking that pill in that vat infected the toxins, and that every Robin who went in after him kind of kept a little bit of themselves. So the big ending to the story is that the Batman Who Laughs, so now the Darkest Knight, takes him back to the planet, and there's just a bunch of Robins all saying cheer, cheer, cheer. This is how he is now the Robin King. He's become the king of the Robins that all are on this planet. So I feel like this army of Robins is going to become relevant probably in some small way at the very least during a fight or something coming up.
Quite possibly. Because obviously we'd seen some of these Robins before. I think even back to the first Metal, they had them on the chains, right?
Yeah, it was always like 3 of them though. It was never this.
It was, yeah. We hadn't seen this many before, no. And I say they may show up in a fight somewhere. I feel like ultimately when we get to that fight, this will, when the editor's note says, "Oh, just go see this for the origin of the army or whatever," that'll feel a lot less consequential than like oh hey, you should probably check out Trinity Crisis.
No, it probably will be. I don't think anyone would argue that, but
yeah,
it still feels like a decent enough tie-in in terms of the context that it's giving. I think I like probably more than anything, I like the story of like what the Batman Who Laughs is doing to these Robins to turn them into his Robins. I like that detail in there. The rest of it, this Robin like fighting like various heroes, on his Earth and then in present day in the whatever the world we're calling it is now. Him taking on Superman and Wonder Woman, because he's always wanted to kill them and he never quite got to do it because the Batman Who Laughs took him away from his world before he got to not Batman, but he got to Superman and Wonder Woman, and so he's really excited about doing it here, and he's kind of disappointed that he's taken away again. But he has now got this army. So,
Do you know, I think would have been a better fit for this story, because I think it's very clearly split up into okay, there are two clearly defined halves of this story, right?
mhm.
And I'm not sure it's enough for a one shot, like a Robin King one shot. However, what I would have done probably is, along with the one that we had in the other anthology issue, is kind of spread them out over a couple of different anthologies, like split this into two. And we've already had two anthologies. I think there is a third one coming up. It would have been quite easy, I think, to split these over into three anthologies and kind of give each one, split this into two and have that as three stories. Might have felt a bit tighter that way, perhaps.
Mm? Yeah.
Or alternatively, the alternative to that, I think, is take the backup that was in this, kind of remove that entirely, and take that first story from that the anthology that it was in, the Robin King story, and kind of put that essentially at the start of this, and be like, no, this is one big Robin King issue. Because if that's what you're, if you're here for a Robin King story, that's what the issue is. I don't think the backup really delivers on that premise at all. Feels a little weirdly just included in this issue, the backup. I feel like, that structurally, I probably would have swapped that with the other thing in the anthology and put the other story in here and had this just be one Robin King story.
I don't think you have to swap anything. I mean, I agree that the backup feels like it's just kind of tacked on because it's not relevant to anything else that's going on in this book. That could have easily went into the next anthology book of some kind. But honestly, the book as it is over 40 pages, and I think it's a $6 book. Like, you could have easily, like, the Robin King on its own, that stuff is still over 30, so you could have still just made it a shorter book and charged $5 for it instead of $6. Would have maybe been the solution, rather than saying, oh, we should have kept back that first Robin King story, and so it would still be the same size. Like, I don't think it really matters, does it?
Sure, I think in my head I was just thinking of either split it up into three separate anthologies or put it all in one book, like as one complete story. It feels a little bit, at least to me, it feels a little bit like you're gouging the audience. Like, hey, we'll throw in an extra story here so we can justify putting up the price. But if you want the full Robin King story, if you're a fan of Robin King, or you've got to get the other anthology as well. Like, it just feels like a lot of just strange choices to me.
That last part feels like a really weird logic thing to say. Like, the whole point of having that first story in that other anthology is to, well, maybe not the whole point, but the idea being that the reason why I wouldn't include it in this as one big one shot is that short story, in theory, is what's supposed to make some people go, hey, I kind of like that short story, and then they see a one shot coming out, oh, I want more of that character, so I'll go buy this overpriced one shot that'll give me his story. The backup in this feeling tacked on, I completely agree with.
No,
but I
get where you're coming from.
So
with that
no,
logic as well.
no, but the thing you said there that sounds really weird to me is that, oh, if you're a Robin King fan, then you have to go back and buy this other anthology. But if you're a Robin King fan, then surely you're only a Robin King fan because he's only appeared in one thing before this. It was that anthology story.
No, he was in the main book. He was chasing the Flashes, right?
Okay, oh yeah, he appeared briefly, but
so if you like that, and then you're told, hey, if you enjoyed that, and then you're told, hey, Tomasi and Rosmo are doing a Robin King one shot. Here you go. Because that obviously this comes after that element of the main book. You might go, oh, I'm interested in that. That's probably enough for most people.
Yeah, but it feels weird to me to say they're gouging because there's already a story that happened before. Like, it's not. That's weird to me. That's like saying, I don't know. Oh, you like this movie? Oh, do you know that there was another one before? I know it's bullshit. You have to go back and buy that other movie now, but there's already one there.
I think the problem is conceptually, to me, it feels like they were conceived at the same time. We know for a fact this Robin King one shot was in the works a long time before they announced it. Snyder put it on his big board near the starter metal. It feels like that they could have just made this into one big story rather than chopping it up like that. To me, it just feels strange as a choice.
I don't understand how this is any different than, say, them like having a couple of teases of Punchline before they have the issue where we really get Punchline story. Like, I don't really see how it's any different than that. Like, by having an appearance early on with a bit of the story that gauges interest and gets people wanting to buy the next thing with them in it. And if they don't like it and they don't care, then that's fine. They don't have to. But basically, you got a taste of what Robin King's story on his own would be in an anthology book that maybe you justified buying because, hey, it's got 7-8 stories, some of these
Sure.
creators I like. It's a bit of a pick and mix, it's a bit of a buffet. You get to try all these different things. And if you like this one in particular, oh, hey, there's a one-shot coming just for you. It's coming out in a month or two's time, and it's got all this extra stuff. So the logic of saying you read this, oh, I'm a Robin King fan. Wait, I have to go back and get an anthology to get the whole Robin King story. It's just like it's like you're actually thinking about it back to front, just so there's something to complain about. It's so weird.
I think fundamentally what it comes down to is, and the reason why I'm thinking this way is, I don't feel like this was enough to justify the page count ultimately. And maybe if you take the back out and bring the page and price down, I wouldn't be thinking this way. But as it is, I'm trying to justify, okay, how do we have it at this price point, this page count? And
well, okay, wait, but why are you trying to justify it at this price and page
because
count?
I guess in my head, that's the price they're selling it at. That's where they've determined they are damn sure they're selling Robin King at this price. That's why they've thrown in the random backup. I'm trying to find a way to make that more appealing as a Robin King book.
Or we just fix it the way that's the obvious fix, is you take out the backup and lower the price.
That works too.
I don't see why you're insisting in trying to justify
because
the
I'm
price.
assuming this is the thing. I'm assuming there is a business mandate that says, no, you are selling these tie-ins at this page count, this price. We will not allow you to do lower. And that is my assumption here, that's why there's this arbitrary story thrown in to hit that count. And at that point, I'm thinking, well, they should have thought this through better. That's my logic here.
Okay.
I do agree fundamentally, just lowering the page count, lowering the price is a much simpler and cleaner and better solution to this problem. Again, I'm just working on the assumption there is a business mandate that they can't do that.
Well, I mean, you're saying business mandate, but it might not be done in that order. The reason why that second story might be here, it might just be that they wrote one too many stories for the next anthology and went, shit, we have to put this somewhere. Tack it onto one of the shorter tie-in books that we can bump up
Possibly,
to $6. Yeah. Like, it could be that way around. And at that point, it's like, well, they're going to put it somewhere. I mean, does it make more sense here compared to, like, one of last month's books? I mean, it would have been even more tacked on in those ones.
I mean, okay, last month's ones. I've been the month before. I think ultimately the story at the end feels like it belongs in one of those other anthologies, right, that we had before.
Not in those, though, because I think that the timeline here specifically is meant to be set where we are in the main story. I think, because even the Robin King story is as well. So I will compliment that. It does kind of feel like they've made that conscious effort so that all the tie-ins, when we read them, are actually set where we are in the main story in between those issues, or during roughly those issues.
I will give it that. Some good editorial work going on there.
So that is really neat. I will agree that, the backup story, like, really you could have just bumped that. But the thing is, though, let's say the next anthology is like a big 80-page one. Did they really want to add in another 10 pages and get to 90? Is it starting to be a bit too unwieldy at that point?
Yeah.
So I don't know. The main story, though, I think is fine. I think there's some nice details in there. And they are, while I'm not a big fan of Rosmo stuff, I think it's less egregious here. And I said this in the last story with Robin King. It kind of fits the manic kind of like evil little shit that he is. Obviously it feels a bit when he's doing other characters, but for the most part, it didn't bother me as much compared to, say, when I tried reading his Martian Manhunter or some of his other anthology entries that have popped up in other books.
That's definitely worse stuff. I think a problem I did have, beyond just the usual, I don't like his style, faces, whatever, is I did actually struggle with the flow of one of the fights. I think it was when Red Tornado was going. I think it's the way he uses Red Tornado in his style, and it felt kind of just messy on the page to me, and I didn't quite get the flow of the fight because of it. And that was an actual storytelling problem I had.
Sure.
I will say usually it's just a stylistic problem I have with it.
In fact, if anything, I would say I actively kind of like his art. See in the section where Robin's been put in the pit, and then he comes out. I actually think that, especially with the colours, well, the greens and sort of light blues, I actually think those few pages look really good, and they actually really fit the sort of feeling that it's going for. So clearly, I think there is a style of story that Rosmo, and again, he is a bit more restrained in the sense that he's not doing those big bulging heads in these pages, where he could ruin it if he did that. Like it would actually take it out of the scene. But it's it's yeah. As far as the story itself goes, though, I think it's a decent, if maybe the least spectacular or necessary out of all the tie-ins so far. If this ends up being the weakest one, if this ends up being the one that's at the bottom of the pile by the time we're done, because it is right now, then I think we've actually had a really good event. Because typically speaking, there'll usually be at least a few that are just worthless shit.
Oh yeah, there's usually only really one or two that's worth reading. Let's be honest.
So that's interesting. The backup, though, when we get to Sampier here at the end, it's basically Duke's fighting this Bruce who. At first, I was thinking like Batman Atomic Skull in the first couple of pages.
That was my first assumption as well.
It turns out it's actually Batman and Ra's al Ghul, but they fell in a Lazarus pit and fused together or something like silly like that.
Yeah, this is very comic booky, isn't it?
This is really silly. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Steph, Cass, and Tim all being there to help.
And it's Duke as well is part of them. Duke was in the Lazarus pit with them as well.
Oh, yeah, on that Earth, you mean? Yes.
Yes.
But like, it does focus on Duke. Duke's the main sort of narrative voice we have. He's the narrator. I kind of liked him feeling more like a part of the Bat family. I think him just interacting with these other legacy Bat characters instantly make him feel more like he's part of that group and kind of establish him. And I have to say, I actually really like the effect and the art where he kind of just goes into like a yellow silhouette to kick. It's like he's using his light powers to become kind of translucent.
Yeah.
And he kicks the Razbat Ghoul. And yeah, I like that page. I like this idea of like using that as a. It almost kind of feels like a. I'm trying to think of something to compare it to. Like it almost feels like some sort of like comic book thing. This is like a weird thing, but like a movie where they'll do like if they're doing something really stylized, they'll switch to like a sort of like simple comic book page for like the middle of a punch, right? That feels like how you do that in a comic book, is you just have them go into a solid color kind of thing.
Oh, sure. Okay. I know what you're getting at.
All right. I don't know. It's very hard. But, I like the final page with them all swinging together and, okay, we've saved this neighborhood, time to get to the next one. And it's the idea that they're just like, going around the Narrows and Gotham and trying to keep some sort of control and save people while this is all going on.
Yeah. I think what I'll say about this story is it's not bad. It's just not really a story. There's not much to it. No,
it's just Duke and this guy fight. Him explaining like how he was created, and Duke sort of like regaining control of his powers. The others helping, and that's it. They're off to save someone else. It's very much just here's a small pocket of the world right now with characters that we've not really been paying attention to. What's so funny is that there's been a decent amount of tension between Batman and the Outsiders and Batman on some of these characters that I don't actually feel like they're as neglected as they usually are, but
yeah, I'd say that would probably be the follow up to this. Is it felt weird that there was no specific interaction between Duke and Cass, really, given their recent history.
Well, the point I was trying to make there was that they're not characters that we've seen in this death metal story. So they do actually feel like, oh hey, we've not actually seen them in the context of this story. That's what I was trying to say. As far as the Cass and Duke, though, I don't think it's missing from this. In fact, the fact that she's the first one who jumps out, because he just sort of yells out Cass, left shoulder or whatever, and she jumps out of the portal that he makes for her. I felt like that was kind of like, I got excited because it was Cass, because, oh, Duke and Cass have got a camaraderie. And then Tim and Steph showed up as well. And so, oh, hey, the whole team's here. Cool. But the fact that Cass showed up first, it made it feel like that was the acknowledgement that they have, a bond, because there's a connection between them now.
Fair enough.
There's not much in the story though to really like have anyone bond more than that though, so I didn't really.
No, I don't even think they kind of. She says just hi, and then not to Duke either, to the bat as she pops out. I don't think they have an actual line of dialogue exchange between them. Like the others do, and I know she's obviously quiet, she doesn't say as much, but it felt weird that there was no, he didn't actively acknowledge her at any point. After that, it just felt a little bit missing to me.
I can't say I agree. I don't know. I really don't know what you're getting at, to be honest. there's no room for it. It's just kind of a quick little fight scene, really. Ultimately, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's lacking to me. It's one of these things where the context of where I know they two are right now added to her jumping out first, but I don't think that anything's missing here because they don't have a moment in this short story, which is really weird to me that you're even the one bringing this up because you've not even read Outsiders.
No, I know, and I'm not saying they need a big moment, but it just felt weird with the conversation at the end where there's a bit of back and forth between the other three, or more specifically Duke and then Steph and then Tim. They're kind of a little bit of back and forth, and there is absolutely nothing. Like Cass, you can't even see on these pages. She's in the silhouette. You can see her in the silhouette in one panel, that top in the conversation part of the page, and then the rest of it's just the other three of them. So it felt missing to me not having some line of dialogue in this conversation, or just feeling like she was part of the group in that conversation. To me, felt missing.
Yeah, I can't say I see it. So that's the backup story. As far as the book goes, it is probably the most skippable of all of these tie-ins so far. I don't regret reading it though. There was definitely some interesting beats in there that I kind of liked, and I'm always down for more Steph and Cass than anything really, even if they're relatively minor in the backup story. But it's okay. It's a bad issue. It's not a great issue, but it's not bad. What are you giving it?
I'm gonna give it a 4. I mean, I didn't really care for the story as much as you did. Like I had some structural issues. I didn't like the art in that. The backup felt superfluous, so it's hard for me to give it. If 5 is what I consider to be an average, like this is just a bog standard. It's okay. Then it's below that for me. But it's not like the worst thing ever, which is why it's not lower than a 4.
It was a fine read. Obviously, not perfect by any means. I'm happy to give this a 6. Happy to give it a 6. But hey, the degrader strikes again.